If you have questions, please pop them in the chat, and between Bridget and I, we will get to your questions. And I'll just hand over to Bridget. Kia ora, and thank you, Bridget.
Kia ora koutou. Call Bridget aho, and thank you for coming today. Hopefully you can all see my slides.
Yes.
So just to sort of give some background to why I decided to sort of organise this three-part series. This year I've been thinking about what my library needed to do to prepare for the implementation of official RDA in May next year, and what this looks like practically. One of these things to do is to review what we are currently doing, but if possible, in an official RDA context. The purpose of this series of webinars is to journey from an original RDA MARC record to a draft official RDA Metadata Application Profile, or MAP. The focus is on what official RDA would call a static, non-aggregate resource, or in more familiar terms, a monograph with only one type of content that is complete when published. We are looking at describing 3 of the 4 resource entities: work, expression, manifestation, no item. We will be working through them in the opposite direction, however, MEW, manifestation, expression, work. This exercise can be repeated with other static non-aggregate works, for example, different print formats, genres of work, audiences, until you are satisfied that you have the full suite of elements you currently use. You can then review things: what's important, what's redundant, what's missing. Note that this session is designed for people already kind of familiar with MARC. For those unfamiliar with MARC, I would suggest a different approach that doesn't immediately muddy official RDA with MARC. After conquering static non-aggregate resources, then comes the world of aggregates, AV materials, serials, descriptions of entities other than work, expression, manifestation, and other unusual things. So the aims of this webinar are simply to identify the elements that describe the manifestation, expression, and work entities for a resource, and remove these elements from the MARC record to see what they look like in an encoding format agnostic context. So what's a metadata application profile? This is probably an important thing to clarify before proceeding. A metadata application profile, also known simply as an application profile or MAP or AP, is essentially a set of instructions for how to record metadata in particular situations. The RDA toolkit says an application profile specifies the entities, elements, and vocabulary encoding schemes that are expected in a set of metadata that meets the functions and requirements of an application that uses the metadata. Right. Whether or not we call them maps, we're used to working with map-like things. Anything from the chapters of the Anglo-American cataloging rules to in-house instruction documents. After the end of session 3, we will have the beginnings of a map for our simple monograph. This is the MARC record we will be examining for a while. I've picked the German translation of the novel, All the Light We Cannot See. I chose this to use as an example because it will show off some aspects of RDA nicely in ways that a resource that is not a translation won't. Don't worry if you don't speak German or if you're unfamiliar with cataloging material in other languages. You don't need to be even remotely fluent to steer the ship. Note that several fields are omitted for this exercise. We won't focus on the control fields, for example, or any holdings. A MARC bibliographic record is how we put a resource's description onto computer and make it accessible. It's familiar and it basically works. But when thinking about content description through an RDA lens, including an original RDA lens, MARC can obscure your vision. MARC makes the bibliographic record look like one story told from start to finish, from top to bottom. In RDA, the story is in fact multiple tales of multiple RDA entities that, when fed into MARC, become an interwoven tangle. To complicate things further, this tangle also features some guest stars that you probably have not thought much about before. They were just part of the scenery. All of this can take a bit of brain work to unravel. In this session today, we will focus on 3 of the tales, with a 4th touched on briefly next time. To illustrate just how tangled things are, here are the 3 resource entities coloured yellow, green, and blue, plus the extra player, which is in purple. It's a hot mess, and it is understandably extremely difficult to think about RDA in this context. So let's begin the great untangle. So the first entity to focus on is the manifestation. The official RDA toolkit defines a manifestation as a physical embodiment of an expression of a work. This might make you feel not so much wiser, so it might be helpful to think more in terms of keywords while examining a MARC record. If you are thinking the following words while looking at MARC fields, you're probably thinking about the manifestation entity. Edition, format, physical, transcribe, transcription, publish, produce, manufacture, statement. Keeping these keywords in mind, here are the manifestation elements recorded in the MARC record. Emphasis is on the way the physical resource describes itself and on its physical characteristics. And these are the RDA element labels, so you can see which RDA elements map to which MARC fields and subfields. In the record here, M just stands for manifestation, so for M title proper, read manifestation title proper for the full element label. Note that sometimes, but not always, the RDA element label matches the MARC subfield label that you're used to. For example, you have variant title of manifestation in the MARC 246 field, varying form of title. This is okay. You can figure out the connection here, even though the wording is very slightly different. For the MARC 020 field, where you'd expect to see a reference to ISBN, you have identifier for manifestation. This is a less granular concept than ISBN. All the MARC 02X fields are different kinds of identifier. We'll talk about identifiers next time on Thursday. Some MARC fields and subfields have been custom made to house RDA elements, the 337 and 338 fields here, for example. So it's a very comfortable match. Another good example, which isn't illustrated here, is the 340 physical medium field. which has multiple subfields to house RDA elements describing physical characteristics of resources. Finally, be aware that there are some uncomfortable mappings between MARC and official RDA. We'll discuss one of these on and off as we work through the process. Removing the metadata from the MARC context results in this simple table. A question to ask ourselves when reviewing what we currently do in order to transition to official RDA is, does this set of elements describe the manifestation adequately? Are the following questions answered? Do these elements describe this manifestation? And do these elements distinguish this manifestation from that manifestation? For example, a large print edition, or an ebook, or a mass market edition. Continuing with the expression entity, the official RDA toolkit defines an expression as an intellectual or artistic realization of a work in the form of alphanumeric, musical, or choreographic notation, sound, image, object, movement, etc., or any combination of such forms. If you are thinking the following words while looking at MARC fields, you're probably thinking about the expression entity. Experience, realization, senses, translation, language, performance. Again, keeping these keywords in mind, these are the expression elements recorded in the MARC record. This time, the emphasis is on the experience. So in this example, you're looking at language and content type and the elements associated with these. The MARC 240 field, uniform title, is an example of an uneasy match between MARC and official RDA. In an ideal RDA world, the MARC 240 would do more than it does, or would do it differently or something. We work with what we've got, bearing in mind the needs and limitations of our library management systems and discovery layers. We'll touch more on this as we go through the sessions. And these are the element labels, so you can see how these map to MARC fields and subfields. Again, lots about language and translation. In the MARC 240 field, we have recorded a value of expression authorized access point for expression. A surprise for me here is the element expression summarization of content, which is in the MARC 520 field. My instinct was for this to be a work element, so I was initially confused to see it hanging out at expression. But after a helpful explanation and some discussion, I thought about the fact that when describing or summarizing content, you may be describing aspects unique to a particular performance, which is an experience. For example, a combination of instruments for music, or the performance of an actor, or costumes, that kind of thing. Thinking this through has helped with my working out what's what and what goes where. Removing the metadata from the MARC context results in this table. Again, a question to ask ourselves is, does this set of elements describe the expression adequately? Are the following questions answered? Do these elements describe this expression? Do these elements distinguish this expression from that expression? For example, a spoken word performance or the English language text. And finally, the work entity. The official RDA toolkit defines a work as a distinct intellectual or artistic creation, that is, the intellectual or artistic content. If you are thinking the following words while looking at MARC fields, you're probably thinking about the work entity: idea, plan, concept, subject, genre, creation, content. These are the work elements recorded in the MARC record. The keywords subject, genre, creation come through here. And these are the element labels in their MARC context. Removing the metadata from the MARC context results in this table. Again, the question to ask when reviewing is, does this set of elements describe the work adequately? Are the following questions answered? Do these elements describe this work? Do these elements distinguish this work from that work? For example, the novel Cloud Cuckoo Land, or the short story collection The Shell Collector. So, coming to the end of this presentation for this session, to recap, what we have done is separated the descriptions of the manifestation, expression, and work entities for the resource being described, identified the RDA elements being used to describe the three entities, and presented these elements in an encoding format agnostic table, including element labels and the values that were recorded. For the next session, we will focus on recording methods, data provenance, and identifying relationship and attribute elements. If you do want to get started figuring out official RDA to MARC mapping, here are some links. Firstly, the NLNZ encoding document, which was shared with you by email and should be available for use from the end of August. It's actually a publicly available document stored in the RDA toolkit. Because it is publicly available, you don't need a subscription to the RDA toolkit to access this. You can also use the following: the RDA toolkit. For example, you can simply search the MARC field and subfield codes in the search box. Use the $ to denote indicator. But do a sense check when going through the results, as these aren't necessarily up to date and don't necessarily give a perfect result. You can also download the full map from RDA properties to MARC encodings from the RDA registry site. This is the same information as the mapping inside the RDA toolkit. So again, do a sense check when you're searching your results. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to the RDA Toolkit directly via the RDA Toolkit website or as part of your EPIC subscription through the National Library. So, are there any questions for the time we've got left? I'll do my best to answer, and other people are free to jump in too. Sometimes it might be a case of me going away to find something out and coming back with an answer next time. I'll just stop sharing now. Oh. Right. Thanks for sharing the links, George. That's cool. Just got the one question here. After the 3-part webinar series, would NLNZ consider adding relevant MARC information to some of NLNZ map elements for us? This is something that we could work through as a community. I think if people have got some of the NLNZ map documents in mind, that's part of the, I guess that's part of the exercise, finding, working through using the information in the toolkit, and as I said, in the NLNZ MARC encoding documentation to find what those elements map to. So yeah, yeah, that is something that we can work through, because that's basically what I did in preparing this webinar. I went through sort of, you can do it in both directions. So you can look at a MARC record and go, okay, so what is the subfield, which element is being recorded, and vice versa. You can go, okay, I've got this RDA element, what MARC field does it map to? So you can go back and forth. But yeah, let me know if you've got if anybody's got some particular questions about some of the elements and you're not sure where you would record it in a MARC record. Yeah, get in touch. We can work things out. Yeah. Are there any other questions, or did I go too fast past any things that anybody would like to kind of go back over? Anything like that? Yeah, Charlotte mentions that NLNZ is keeping them quite separate, but yeah, the other thing you could do is like copy it into a document for yourself and then add an extra column on the side. Spoiler alert for next week. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the keyword approach. I find it really helpful. I remember like years ago when I was first being introduced to RDA, I think it was Deborah Fritz made the expression experience connection. And since then I found expression a much, much easier concept to grasp. It's how do you experience the work? And I was like, oh, phew, now I get that now. And also because they both start with EXP. But good. Great. Oh, good, good. Oh, I'm pleased that people have been finding it helpful. Great. Thank you. Yeah. So I think I think we can share the slides after this, which will have like the keywords if people do find those helpful, and then you can sort of have a look through your MARC records and sort of, yeah, as I suggested, go and think, what am I thinking about when I'm looking at this little piece of a MARC field? Yeah. Cool.
Bridget, I was just
Thank
going to
you.
say to everybody, LIANZA will try to get this up on our YouTube channel as soon as possible. Jess is amazing, so I think it's either likely to be today or tomorrow. So the full recording will be there for people to refer to. So yeah, the LIANZA YouTube.
Yeah, that'd be great. And as I said, I'll get my presentation to Jess as well, so potentially can distribute that or save it somewhere that people can access it.
Yep, brilliant.
Okay.
Well, I think a lot of happy people here.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's so much work goes on to curating information, designing it, practicing it. So yeah, we all really acknowledge the time that you've given. Thank you. And for the next two that are coming up, so Thursday and next Tuesday as well. So if there are no more questions, I think Bridget deserves a double tea break. We'll close with karakia and we'll be back on Thursday. So una hea te pō whiri marama, tomo kia te ao whātu tangata. Tātai ki runga, tātai ki raro, tātai ahoro. Humiei, tā kiei. Thanks, Bridget. Thanks again. Kia ora, everybody. Have a great day.